Hey guys, Poro here with another video. This time we are going over the LTA South. Something you might notice right away. Okay, why does it look different? Why do I have a spreadsheet open instead of the Sheep Esports page? Well, that's because the Sheep Esports page actually isn't updated yet. I don't know why exactly. LTA South is done, so... But the fact that this roster is wrong and missing a slot, that this roster is missing a slot, different weird stuff. So I just made it on over here. Unfortunately, that does mean one bad thing in that there's no suspense to my ranking. This is in order, so these teams are already in order. So yeah, since it's all out there, let's just get into it. Leviathan is one of the two teams that will be representing the LLA in the LTA South. Their roster has a portion of the Astral core, and then they grabbed Seo from R7, and then two Brazilian players. I want to preface this, while I do have this team in last, I do think they have high upside. There are arguments for the entire list that I made to be moved around. In fact, I actually struggled with this list a lot. There was a very solid portion where I didn't know all the way from 3rd to 7th. I didn't know where to put the teams. I think that they're a good team with promise, but I don't know if the players are going to hold up. So if we go through these players one at a time, first we'll start with the Brazilian players with the CBLOL players, because that's what most of the LTA South viewers will be familiar with. We've got Scary from Kaboom and Pro Delta from VKS. That VKS squad was actually pretty impressive. They managed to go 2nd place. And from the time that I spent watching that team, I didn't necessarily think that they had a weak link. So I'm pretty confident in saying that Pro Delta is probably a top half level support here. Scary, on the other hand, I'm not so sure about. That Kaboom roster had a lot of talent and they still flopped. But that said, apart from an import, I think that Scary is probably better than most of the resident Latin American junglers that they could have gone with. Moving into the actual LLA players, Zothve, Cody, and Seo were all at or near the top of the table in their region in their respective roles, so respect for that. However, the LLA is definitely a weaker region than the CBLOL, so I think there will be some growing pains. In my opinion, I think Zothve and Seo will struggle. I think they're going to come out of the split not being in the top half in their roles. Seo especially will struggle because the CBLOL was always historically famous for having really good bot laner talent. And while they haven't always been known for their top laners, I actually think the top lane lineup across the board is pretty stacked. Like, if I'm looking at this, I think realistically there is no chance that Zothve will be able to outplay Weiser, Robo, FMB, Birdall, Gigo, or maybe even Hidan. Bull is just a question mark because he took an entire year off, basically. And then for Seo, the only ADC that I think Seo could top at all is the other LLA ADC, Snaker. Or Snacker. A bunch of people call him Snacker, apparently, but I think Snaker sounds cooler, so I'm going to go with that until proven otherwise. Of the LLA talent, I think the only player on this team who will be able to slot right in and hold up immediately is Cody. Cody is pretty much by all standards the best resident LLA mid laner, possibly even historically. I don't think he'll have any trouble fitting in. I think he has good mechanics. I think he has good game sense. Do I think he's going to be top half? No. But do I think he's going to struggle? Also no. But that's kind of where I'm at when I look at this team. I see 3 players in Zothve, Scary, and Seo who I don't know how they'll hold up against the rest of the league. I see Cody, who is probably going to be a bottom half mid laner, and then Pro Delta, who might be a top half support, but that's definitely not enough to drag this team up. I think if this team were to find success, it would have to be Zothve and Seo stepping up and showing more growth than I expect from them. They were players who were strong within the LLA domestically, so maybe there's a chance that when they play up, they'll be able to improve at a faster rate. Maybe there's also a chance that Cody is even better than I thought and that he doesn't struggle at all against the CBLOL mid laners. But that's one too many variables for me to be confident in putting Leviathan any higher than last. Next up in 7th, I have W7M. For those wondering why the LTA South video took so long to come out, this team is the exact reason why. I don't like to make these lists before the teams are absolutely confirmed. For example, if we take a look at the LTA North list, for the longest time, I thought that Dignitas's jungler was going to be Spica. I almost made the video with the assumption that it would be Spica, and then essentially at the last minute, Dignitas swapped to Shaden instead. So I'm glad I waited to make that video. Same thing for the LTA South. W7M had a roster that we thought they were going to use pretty early on. Then there were a lot of complications, and while we finally have a complete 5-man roster, I am a little bit skeptical. So for those who aren't aware of the timeline, all of the struggle with W7M forming their roster was around the jungle position. Initially, this team was going to be Fluxo, and they were going to keep the Fluxo jungler and mid laner, who were Shinny and Fu. Then there was a brand deal between Fluxo and W7M. They discussed a merger for a while. They discussed being bought out. From what I understand, the solution that they came to was that Fluxo was completely bought out by W7M, and when that happened, the jungle situation kind of got out of control. Again, this is all alleged. I am unfortunately not as in tune with the Brazilian league scene as I wish I was. I may have some of this wrong, so I apologize if my information here is incorrect. But my impression is that Shinny and W7M wanted to play with each other initially, and it was going to happen. Then W7M changed their mind and decided to try to play Sting. Sting was an up-and-coming jungler in the CBLOL Academy scene. Sting agreed and said that he wanted to play for W7M. W7M agreed. They had like a verbal agreement. They were about to sign, and then at the last minute, W7M decided, you know what? We're going to hold a tryout. We're going to give Sting a tryout, but we want to try out some other people just to make sure. They held the tryout, and I guess at the tryout they decided they didn't want to play with Sting, or Sting was not super happy with W7M for going behind his back essentially and saying like, hey, we want to do a tryout. But either way, Sting left the roster. Then W7M tried to reach out to Shinny again and say, hey, we have an open jungle slot, do you want to come back? And Shinny basically said, fuck you, no. You screwed me over once, I'm not coming back, right? And that put W7M in this big pit where they needed to figure out a random jungler who they could grab super fast. The jungler who they ended up grabbing was GrivR. Spent some time playing for Liberty, also spent some time playing for Liberty's Academy team, if I recall correctly. But for those who know, Liberty, not the best team, GrivR, not the best jungler. This is more of the type of situation where GrivR was just grabbed because he was probably one of the only remaining junglers who could even fill the slot in the first place. I also have similar skepticism around the mid laner Fu. Fluxo was not a fantastic team last split. The core of Shinny and Fu I already wasn't super excited about. GrivR and Fu, I don't think they're going to hold up very well. So why do I not have W7M last? That's because they/Fluxo made one extremely good decision that I'm very happy about, and that is that they decided to sign the bulk of the core of the Pain Gaming Academy roster. For those who don't know, Pain Academy, they were arguably the best academy team in the CBLOL Academy, like across the board for the entire year. They did end up getting second in summer, but then they went to the Americas Regional Tournament, which is essentially a super tournament where the academy teams from South America and North America come together and play against each other. Pain Academy actually won this tournament, and they beat out multiple players who were LCS caliber players. In fact, specifically to win the final, they beat FlyQuest Academy, which was a team that was hosting 5 players who had played in the LCS before. So it would be an understatement to say that the Pain Academy team is full of interesting prospects that could be really good in the future. Hidon, Marvin, and Geeks all coming from that roster. I think they all show a lot of promise. I would love to see this core stick together for a long period of time. I think there's a chance that a couple years down the line, this could be a potential championship core. So with that kind of praise being given, why do I only have them in 7th then? Well, I did debate for a bit if I wanted to move them up a few slots, but the longer it took W7M to figure out what was going on with their jungle slot, the less and less confident that I got. In fact, it even got to the point where I considered putting W7M in last, because if I've learned anything from my time in the league scene, it's that if a league team has blatant management issues, they are doomed to fail. Maybe they won't fail right away, but they'll always fail eventually. We're talking EG, we're talking IG after they won their world championship, FPX after they won their world championship. These teams all struggle with management issues, and therefore their teams always produce worse results than the caliber of players that they have. I really, really hope that W7M's management doesn't negatively impact Hidon, Marvin, and Geeks. I hope that what I've heard about W7M's internal issues might be exaggerated or something. Like, for all I know, W7M, Shinny, and Sting all kind of like shook hands and were all happy with how things ended up. Like I said, the sources that I got this from are very limited. But basically, at the end of the day, when I look at this team, I see 3 promising young players, 2 players who are not as exciting but are at least somewhat veterans, and a questionable management team after a fairly short notice buyout. I think it's understandable why I don't have more faith in them, even though they managed to grab so many of the Pain Academy members. In 6th, I've got VKS, Vivo Kid Stars. They made one really big pickup in the offseason, and that was picking up Trimby for support. Trimby is for sure 100% the best support in this league. I also think that VKS is the type of organization that Trimby is going to go well with. They're very much a team who is on the rise. And the rest of their roster also speaks to that. They have Kisei and Morpheus, who were both on the Academy team. And mind you, this is the Academy team that beat Pain in summer and then placed 4th in the Americas tournament. Kisei especially is a player who I've been following for a while, ever since he popped up in the LCO. So I'm glad to see that Kisei finally has a chance to play in a major region. Whether Kisei and Morpheus are too green or not is something that we won't figure out yet. I think that VKS is in a very similar position to W7M, where they have more of a development roster. Maybe won't have success in winter, but might be looking to contend for a better playoff spot come spring and summer. Decimus, their jungler from last split, a fine keep, but big question marks surrounding Bull. Some of you may be wondering why I have Bull labeled as coming from Red Canids, because it's been a really long time since Bull's played there, and since then he has played for a few other teams. But when he does play for those teams, it's for very, very short periods of time, and he hasn't really played anywhere competitively since the start of 2024, if that. So the way I see it, the last time this guy really had a true roster spot was back with Red Canids. With that much time away from the scene, I don't know how he'll do. I don't know if he's going to be rusty. That question mark in the top lane, combined with their 2 development players from Academy, is enough for me to put this team in the bottom half. In 5th, I've got Furia, and for those of you who have been following what I've been doing with the CP in the past few seasons, should know that Furia has been my second favorite team in the CB for a while now. The entire reason why I like this team is because I like IU. I think that IU has potential to be one of the best Western bot laners. His mechanics and natural game sense are absolutely insane. I even made a mini documentary of him on my main channel. His support, Jojo, is a support who has been able to play for some of the top teams in the CB in the past, and Furia also decided to keep their mid laner from last split, Toots. Now, here's my problem. Furia has not been an amazing team for the last few seasons. On paper, they really should be better. IU should be one of the best bot laners in the league. Jojo should be one of the best supports in the league. So if Furia can't seem to place top half, it is either because their top side is lacking, or because the team is just not getting along that well in some way. With that said, that's why I'm a little bit skeptical of Toots. Pretty much everybody who was on that Furia roster who isn't named IU and Jojo, I viewed as somebody who might have potentially been bringing the team down. However, the fact that the 3 of them stuck together might mean something. I'm willing to give Toots another chance, see what he's got. And then the other big news for Furia is that they got 2 pretty nice upgrades, in my opinion. In the jungle spot, they got Taru, who was the jungler for that infamous Pain Academy roster. Pretty much everybody on the Pain Academy roster is somebody who I would trust to hold a spot in the LTA South. And then their top laner, they got Gigo from Vivo Keat Stars. Gigo was definitely one of the more exciting players to watch on that roster, and a big reason as to why they were able to finish second in the first place. While I have this team in 5th, this is definitely a team that I'm going to want to root for. It's a team that I'm very excited for. If they happen to place top half, I will be a very excited Poro. In 4th place, I've got the merger between Isarus and Astral. This is the other spot that the LLA took over, and in my opinion, the best LLA team formed out of the 3 LLA teams that managed to survive. Isarus Astral managed to really get a good deal out of the LLA dissolving, in my opinion. Getting the bad stuff out of the way first, I think Snaker's going to struggle. He was a good enough bot laner for the LLA. I think he will likely be the worst ADC in the league. Ackerman in the same boat, but a little bit less. I think Ackerman will be fine in the CBLOL support pool, but I also think as a whole, the Brazilian supports do tend to be better than the Latin American supports as of right now. Snaker and Ackerman might show some growing pains. The rest of the team should be completely fine. Miro has shown some insane upside. He had a really strong MSI with R7 in my opinion. Jose is a player who has always been one of the best Latin American junglers. He even had some time in the LCS where he managed to hold his own there too. I would say there is a strong argument that Jose is actually the best jungler in the LTA South this split. And their top laner, they managed to pick up Birdall. This is an insane pickup. Similar to Jose, I think that Birdall has a clear argument for best top laner in the CBLOL. Basically, the story of this team is that I think they will show topside dominance, and their bot side will just have to hold on and pray that their top side can come through. Could this be a little bit of an overshoot? Sure. Could I move them down? Yeah. But I think that when your team has potentially the best top laner and the best jungler, and a mid laner who's probably going to be middle of the pack, I find it hard to move this team any lower than I did. In 3rd, we've got Red Canids, and this is one of 2 teams in the league who are keeping their entire roster from last season. FNB, Aegis, GrivR, Brance, Frosty. I think this team has some big upside. I really like FNB, GrivR, and Brance. I think Frosty and Aegis are okay individually, But as a core, this team really meshes well, and I'm glad they stuck together. They did end up losing to Vivo Stars last year, but luckily for them, that entire roster has been split up and is scattered across the league now, so I think that they're set to be a top 3 contender again. I wouldn't even be surprised if Red manages to get second or first. I think that they're that good. Brant's, similar to a lot of the other young Brazilian ADC talent, is extremely promising and could probably hold his own in the LTA North as well. GrivR is a player who I've always thought is extremely smart about the game. Every single time that I see him play on a team, it seems like the team has a good sense of game direction and good planning, and at some point it's just got to be not a coincidence. It's not like I have access to GrivR's comms or anything, and even if I did, I wouldn't understand the language that he's speaking. But I'm just going to blindly assume that he has to have good shot calling. And FMB is definitely a very, very solid top laner for this league. I think pretty much any team would be happy to pick him up. In second, I've got Loud. For some people, this placement might be a little bit of a swing and a miss for them. If you think that Loud is not this good, I understand. This core has shown slightly weaker and weaker performances as the years have gone on, and last split they only managed to finish 4th. So if you don't have faith, I understand. With that said, let's take a look at the changes that they went for. Croc retired, they replaced him with Wiz. Redbert retired, they replaced him with Winsome. I think swapping Redbert for Winsome is a massive, massive upgrade. In my opinion, a lot of the struggle that Loud had last year was actually due to Redbert. I think Redbert was just not at the caliber of a top-level CBLOL team, even though they managed to go to MSI together. It was one of those things where I thought that Redbert was just not up to the standard of everybody else at that tournament. I was skeptical going in. My fears were realized heading out. Winsome is a support who's not amazing or anything, but he is definitely a higher upside support than Redbert. On the flip side, I think Wiz is a downgrade. Not that I'm super impressed with Croc or anything either. I think that Croc was also a weaker member of the team, but unfortunately the CBLOL jungle pool has always been a little bit lacking, and I think that Wiz was a bottom half jungler in the CBLOL last year. So to see him here on Loud is not the greatest feeling in the world. The way that I see it, they downgraded their jungler and they upgraded their support, and the two of them balance out. So that pretty much leaves how much do you have faith in the main core? And I still like this main core a lot. Robo is a player with an insanely high upside. I think that when Robo is on his game, he's the best top laner in the CBLOL. I think if he was on his game, he could even be better than Birdall. Robo's got great mechanics as well. Tanones is a fantastic facilitator. If you were going to put Robo and Route on a team together, you would want Tanones as your mid laner for sure. Robo and Tanones both obviously having cases for the best CBLOL player of all time. Now that I'm thinking about it, who would you put on that list? It would be like Robo, Tanones, and BRTT, right? Am I missing anyone? Let me know in the comments if there's a player who played in the Brazilian League who you think is better than those 3 players. And then of course you have Route. I think that he's one of the best ADCs in the league. Maybe doesn't have quite the same upside as a player like Teton does, but in terms of consistency and consistently good play, he can't be beat. I still have faith that this team will be good. The fact that they won, what was it, like 3 titles in a row, should speak for itself. I think that even though this core is getting older and older, I think they are all still mechanically proficient. And I'm hoping that for Robo specifically, I'm hoping that getting knocked out in 4th last split will finally put a fire under him where he'll want to try during the regular season. I think if this entire team is willing to try from day 1 to win all of their games, they're going to be really good. And finally, in first place, I have Pain. Weiser, Karaoke, Dinkato, Teton, Curry, they're keeping their entire core from their win last season. This team's got some good players. Do I think that Karaoke and Curry are still not at the same level as the rest of the team? Sure. Do I think that this Pain roster would lose to any iteration of Loud that had Seos on it? Yeah, but this team won last split pretty convincingly. They kept their entire core together. They have players who I think have potential to grow and get better, like Dinkato and Teton. Weiser is a solid top laner who will always be a consistent threat. And even though Karaoke and Curry have their downsides, they have been top half players in their roles for the past couple of years now, so I have to give them respect where respect is due. Not much else to say. I think that Pain is pretty much a lock. The way that I see it, Pain should be first on everybody's list. 2 through 7 is kind of a big mishmash. You could pretty much put the teams in whatever order you want and come up with some kind of argument. You could say that Loud has a strong 3-core. You could say that Red kept their entire team together and they've always been good. You could say that Isarus Astral has extremely strong individual players compared to the rest of the region. You could say, oh, Furia has one of the best top laners and an up-and-coming jungler and bot laner who could carry them to the playoffs. You could say that VKS has Trimby, and that means that they're automatically going to be an insane team. You could say that W7M has the Pain Gaming Academy core, and so therefore they also have to be good. I'm very excited for this league. I think there's a lot of variance. I think that the odds that somebody could try to put these 8 teams in order and actually be correct is basically 0. I would be shocked if my list holds up. I think at least one of these teams that I put in the bottom half will surprise and end up playing above their pay grade. Don't know which one. I think the reasoning I gave for why I ranked these teams like this are at least decently sound, and that's really all I can ask for. In my opinion, out of the 6 regions, this was by far the hardest to rank for me. And it's not even because I don't know the players. Like, I know these players. I've been following these players for years. I feel like I have a good idea of what they're capable of. But I feel like all of these teams put together some promising rosters that all have different amounts of upsides and downsides, and it was very interesting to try to rank them all. With that said, that's all I've got for you guys for this one. My plan is that LPL will be next, and I want to get that one out within a few days, because LPL is starting on like the 12th or something. That one's coming up fast, so I need to get my power rankings video out before their first games actually start. LCP, we're finally getting to a point where their league is starting to come together. You can see I have some highlights here, but for the most part, it's really decided. DFM's roster is essentially locked, although it's still all rumors, no official signings. Same thing with Chiefs. They're essentially locked, although all rumors, no official signings. We also still have to figure out exactly which mid laner support VKE plan to play, as well as which mid laner GAM plans to play. But other than that, these guys are pretty much done. LPL is essentially done. Really the only thing that we have to figure out here is get these last few signings out of the way. I would be shocked if Thunder Talk doesn't sign these 4 again. I would be shocked if Top Esports doesn't keep Cream and Jackie Love. LGD will probably go with Xiaoye, and then at that point, the only remaining question mark will be if Doonby is actually playing for NIP. There have been some rumors surfacing around, so we have to see what happens with that. But once all of that is done, that'll be all of the major regions actually complete. So we are right on the border of finishing out these winter power rankings. Alright, thanks for watching. I will see you guys next time.